When we spoke on the phone yesterday, Robert told me he wanted to take the work out of the frame and into the space. And I was worried that he might have been having a panic attack. He was. I realised, I quickly realised he was talking about taking the work into the gallery space, and perhaps into architectural space more broadly speaking. But also, I would speculate that he was talking about space in a slightly more esoteric sense, that he was perhaps referring to the space that is inside each of us, the space of our own unique experience. Printmakers have a reputation for being conservative, and sometimes they are preoccupied with technique, with refining technique, and with working within a set of already established boundaries. Robert is not one of those kinds of printmakers. I think he's fascinated by the attributes of printmaking. Things like multiplicity, the repetition of motifs and images, the layering of information, and the gap between the material that a printmaker works with, copper plate or a lithography stone, woodblock, for example, and the finished print on paper. These things are all integral, essential elements of printmaking. And I think Robert is preoccupied with those things, but in a way that they become a sort of launch pad for further investigation, for taking these things, examining them, and extending them, or perhaps an appropriate word today is expanding them into a new set of formal and conceptual approaches. Edgar Degas said that painting is easy when you don't know how, but very difficult when you do. Degas, of course, was also a draftsman and a printmaker, and I think his formulation holds equally true for any medium. It's difficult it's easy when you don't know how. It seems paradoxical to say that, but I think it's true, because when you do know how to do something, then the onus is on you to take that thing somewhere new. To take the knowledge that you've gained of that thing and to make that knowledge the start of something rather than the end of something. An exhibition is a kind of end, but only a kind of end. So this exhibition now, we have the opportunity to see Robert's work and to enjoy it, but also I think mindful that it's a pause in the work. It's not a completion of the work. And I think any artist or any artwork that is good, certainly, we're ambitious. It's always true to say that an exhibition is a moment of rest in the work. It's not the culmination of anything. It's just a point, an intermediary stage of the work. And this sense of becoming in the work, I think, is very apparent in Robert's prints and drawings and works that combine both of those techniques. The sense of becoming, of infolding and unfolding, is very tangible and it's literally present in the way the works are made, and also sort of conceptually important in the way that we might experience the works and think about the works. So, just want to return to those basics of printmaking that I mentioned, because I think they're very useful in trying to, in helping to think maybe or describe more clearly what Robert's work is addressing and what it's dealing with. So these characteristics of the multiple, of the layering of information, and of this gap between the material that the artist works with and the finished print. All of these things, I think, tell us something interesting about Robert's approach. So, to take multiplicity, a thing that exists as a multiple can seem less precious than something unique. Good printmaking, I think, bucks this trend. In printmaking, the reproducibility of the image becomes a positive value. It is not less valuable because there are more than one. It is more valuable because it is worth repeating. So the second of these characteristics of printmaking that I think are so important. Well, maybe I should just point to the notion of multiplicity and the value of repetition. I mean, I think that everything in the exhibition really speaks to that and demonstrates the importance of that. Perhaps the work behind this entropy titled Since Midnight Last Night, Robert, I think.
Sorry?
Titled Since Midnight Last Night. Right. I think that this work is perhaps a particularly useful demonstration, I suppose, of how repetition becomes a creative strategy. It's not repetition for its own sake. It's not multiplicity for its own sake. It's repetition that acknowledges that every time something is repeated, it's changed. And I think that's demonstrated very eloquently here in particular. But yeah, so that second thing, that second characteristic of printmaking, the idea of layers of information. We live in an age of information. There is so much information available to us now that sometimes it's hard to see what matters most. Fine art prints are built in layers of discrete information, separate layers of gesture, colour, and print, and imprint coming together in the finished work. We can see, when we look at a print, we can see the whole work, the whole object, but we can also see its discrete layers. They remain visible as discrete layers. So, for me, one of the pleasures of printmaking and of graphic work generally is that it helps us to see clearly, because this notion of separation, the separate pieces of information and the whole thing coexisting, that we can comprehend both of those things at once, I think is kind of very instructive, and it's kind of a relief when we're surrounded by so much density of information in most of our lives. And this, the final quality, the gap between the material and the finished work. In printmaking, there is a separation, a gap between the material, the copper plate, the targeted stone, the wood block, etc., and the finished print. The artist works on the plate, the stone, the block of wood, but that is not what we see in the end. In the end, we see a print, usually on paper, an image that reflects the work surface. This after image carries the evidence of the work surface, but because physically separate, seems to escape the ponderous weight of its labour. Free from its material source, a print is charged with a special kind of energy. Today it seems right to call this an in-between energy, a space of possibility between the material and its reflection in the finished work. This notion of lightness, I suppose, the idea of the graphic work being light and sort of freed from its association with material and labour, I think is, again, I think it's demonstrated in all the works, but I think sort of most explicitly, perhaps in these works, these two works here, which are both called Zephyr. No, this one is Zephyr Winds of Change, and this one is Expanded Space. Thanks. So in these two works, I think you can see that idea very literally and very beautifully, the notion of the printed work or the graphic work extending itself away from its source. Yeah, so thank you. So just to say finally, these works, like all the visual art we engage with, are imprinted through the eyes onto our experiencing selves. So I would invite you to look again and again at these works, their combination of drawing and printmaking, of folding and unfolding, coming together to make what is a uniquely stimulating and pleasurable show. Thanks.
Just like to respond to John's most eloquent speech there. He mentioned earlier it's not going to be a speech, it's going to be tough, but it's very fine. I firstly would just like to thank John for accepting my invitation for him to come and speak to us today. I've known John in the last couple of years since I joined a member of Blackchurch Print Studio. We meet occasionally there and we're artists, colleagues and friends. I have great respect for John's art, and I've heard him speak on many occasions, and I have this notion that he's putting this show together, that he's an ideal person to speak for me, and that's what he's done with it, because he is most eloquently articulated anything I would want to say. And it's just done so well. It's fun.
My pleasure.
I want to just maybe mention the whole business of putting a show together. You know, John talked about Joe taking on the space. I arrived here on Wednesday morning, and I was notified in advance to say, look, the director, Emer, wants a meeting at 1 o'clock. Now, I haven't seen Emer in 6 months, and she was to visit me in July, and I kept praying every day. I hope she won't come. So I'm not ready. But and she did. But Emer is really the curator here of exhibitions, and so I had made up photos of every wall and the layout of every wall and projections of what these might look like. And I set everything out on table here, the photos, printouts, what the thing would look like, because these obviously weren't acceptable. And I was told in certain terms, you don't put anything on the wall until you speak to Emer. And that was fine, and that's her right. And so I came in and sat down, and Emer came in and sat down and looked. And as I said, we hadn't seen each other for 6 months. I knew you'd be organised, she said. And that was just the nicest compliment she could pay. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to show you, because I set myself a sort of an aim and a target with the cell work on the back wall there, which I had done previously, but and as John mentioned, I wanted to take the work, as it were, and the concept of what I was doing out of the frame and into the space, to take on the real space. And of course, that wall there is daunting. This space, the atrium space, is daunting. And how is I going to manage that? So, but you can't do something like that unless you have the offer of the space to do it. You can't make work like this until you know where it's going to go. So the challenge was, how do I deal with that space? How do I take it on? And I'm indebted to Emer for giving me the opportunity to take it on. The whole team here in Draiocht, I have to say, have been wonderful to work with. As I say, I came here on Wednesday with my bits and frames, and all of this was packed into small flat pack boxes. I was just saying to my friend Mike there, I might drop them off in IKEA on the way when I'm taking the work out, because it just will not fold into flat packs. But it took 3 days to get this up, and I'm indebted to the team here, Andrew and Dylan, who worked with me all day Thursday, and a bit on Wednesday and a bit on Friday then as well. To Nicola, who has been wonderful to work with over the past while. We did a lot of exchanges of emails and bits of things that we had to organise. Nicola is the PR person here, and the team have been wonderful to work with. Everybody I met here over the course of the week has been great to work with. To the restaurant, to the desk over here. It's just a great team here, and they do a fabulous job. And I felt so welcomed here, and everybody is so friendly, and I just want to extend that and maybe send that back to everybody, because I mean it. It's just been a wonderful experience working here. I want to thank my friends in Blackchurch Print Studio, David, he's just arrived in there, and to Hazel and David, I just want to extend my thanks, and the team and colleagues, John and Vince in Blackchurch. They're just a great team to work with. They're always very encouraging, and that helps when you have people who believe in what you're doing. So my thanks to all in Blackchurch. I want to thank my many friends, family who are here today. I spoke to Emer here yesterday. She was in for a bit, and we just talked about this thing. She was saying, yeah, you need it open because you need to meet the people. And in musicians and performers on stage get to do this to have an audience, but the artist it's a very isolated business where we work in our studios, we work on our own a lot of the time. But it is nice to meet and talk and discuss your work with people. So having a day like today is wonderful, and it means a lot to me, I have to say. I want to do a special tribute then to my family, to my wife Teresa, my daughter Reva, Dermot, my son, and to Jason, who's here, my grandson. My grandmother can't be here today, but we know she's preoccupied and busy today, but we'll get to hear her. But all of my family, they've all been very supportive of what I do, very tolerant of what I do, and very helpful, and they've all done varying jobs along the way for me in conjunction with this show, and they do for many other shows that I've done as well. But to you all for coming today, for being here for me, I thank you. I don't know if there's any more I can say. Thank you very much for coming.